So I wanted to show off how to get Excel data into F Sharp. I used to do this a lot with VBA, and so when I jumped to F Sharp from C Sharp, uh, I've been using certain libraries and things, and I just struggled with this more than I thought I should have. So let me show you the solution I've come to, and if you have a better one, let me know. Let's jump right in. You'll notice that I've already made my project. This is going through Visual Studio's prompts, make new project, what was it? Console app, F Sharp, Net Core, not even Net Framework. I kind of messed up my naming, but whatever. And it creates all this for you. And then you'll notice I put 4 Excel files in here, or rather I put 1 Excel file in once and did the laziest thing I could to copy it 3 times. Let's take a quick look at it. So, we have 4 tabs. The first one's called tabular. This is data as we wish we would get it, ideally in like a CSV usually. But, if not, at least it's nice, well organized, easy to get. I did one with the table just to show something off later. I even named the table, but that won't matter. And then we have report data. Now report data, what have I just done? Oh, sorry. Report data is what I often deal with. Well, not often, but sometimes. You'll have a third-party system that you don't have access to. Maybe it doesn't have an API, maybe you can't get to the database, maybe they just don't output things outside of, in my case, Excel and PDF in human-readable reports. So they've got all these words, all this stuff going on that's not data, they do indenting and whatnot to kind of draw the eye to certain things, and you care about none of that because you really just want it to look like this so you can go cram it in a table somewhere and then do higher-level analytics. Well, getting it out of this is, the trick. And you have to usually write decently complicated code. Obnoxious little loops that go, okay, well, find what this is, look for this, then do that, look for this, then do that. You'll notice that I have 2 report tabs. I have one report here on the second, which has groupings up here. So you have your type, then your location, and then your items and the amounts. And I'm not going to go through and parse all this. I just want to show this for a reason. And then I have like a taxes group down here. Then over here, you'll notice that for the next day, we have a totally different looking report because, let's say it was a holiday, so everything was closed, so there's no data. This will become important later, but you don't need to worry about it now. So let's save this, close it, and go to the code. Have I forgotten to cheat? Yeah, I have. So ignore the man behind the curtain. I've taken a few stabs at this. So right here, we have a nice little function that says, files, and it takes a filter and a path, and it just, pipes them in there. And so here's our filter, SLX files, and the path is just a relative path to where I've stored those files. Ideally, don't do this, but, And if we run it, we pipe it to a printfn. And hey, we've got our horribly named files. Now, for the purposes of this, I'm going to only want to deal with one file. I just wanted to show that this is how I normally do things because you're normally going to then want to do, sequence.map or list.map or array.map, whatever, and then map your next function over it, or often result, ROP, the whole thing, railway, you get the idea. Not the point. Just showing that off. So we're going to do sequence.head just to get the first one. Cool. Now, how do I get the Excel data out of this? Well, all you have to do is go up here, and if you know how to use the CLI to do this, the whole package manager console thing and doing that, great, fine, you're wonderful. But if you don't know what I just said, you're going to want to go to you right-click on dependencies, you go to manage NuGet packages. In here you can see lots of stuff, updates, installed, there's plenty of videos on all this, but all you're going to want to do is type Excel. And you'll notice that some of the most downloaded things with 9 million and 4 million downloads are Excel Data Reader and Excel Data Reader.dataset. We're going to want both. Excel Data Reader basically reads the data from Excel, and dataset is a very useful object to hold that data so that you can manipulate it easily. Cool. I just installed them. As you saw, click install, click OK, you're good to go. They're MIT licenses. So we now have, as you see again, if we go into dependencies under packages where I just removed them sneakily, we have Excel Data Reader and Excel Data Reader Dataset. How do we use them? Well, you'll also notice that I've cheated again, and I've already added an Excel file.fs. This is the naming convention and method I normally use. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. So we just make ourselves a module. You'll notice I have some commented code in here, so we're going to drop the unit at the bottom. We're going to uncomment the code. Now, I didn't type it, I didn't show how, I didn't show why. I literally copy paste this in, or honestly, I have a module save that I import in anytime I need to do this. Because the nice thing about this code is, this is encapsulated, abstract, whatever buzzword you want to use. This is good enough as it is that you don't ever need to adjust it. I just always put this in. The only thing that might catch your eye is this line here. You may not need this line. You may need it. I've heard from others that they don't. It's not normal when you're using Excel Data Reader to need to do this, and yet for some reason on multiple different machines I've had to. It seems to be an F# thing. But again, I've seen people who use F# say that they don't need to do that. No idea why. I'm thinking it's a net core thing versus net framework. Not sure. Doesn't matter. Short version, this is the code. Pause, type it out. Get it right, make sure it all looks good, but this is literally all you need, and then save it. We now have, you can change the function name if you want, a function that takes a path, and then it opens up that path, and it returns a data set. So as you can see, a system.data data set. So it's going to take all that Excel data and return it as a data set. This will work on XLS, XLSX, and XLM files for certain. I believe it might even work on XLSB, but don't quote me on that. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. Now, to show you how that would work, let's go ahead and do it here. So we get our files, and then we're going to map over those files Excel.getData. Boom. And it works. And now, when we run this, it's going to return a data set. And it'll just say it's a data set. It's not very cool looking right now. System.data.dataset. Hooray! So, let me show you a couple of things I wish I knew when I started working with this. The first thing is just really quickly how to navigate it. Let's call this, now that we know what this is, that this is our Excel file, let's call it Excel. We'll call it Excel file. I don't, like, these naming conventions are not good. I am really ad hocing this. Please do not think this is perfect. So let's do, let result equal Excel file dot, and you know what, we're going to make this a function that just takes no values. Let's do tables. I believe that'll still be an object that won't show anything cool. So let's do tables.count. So how many tables does it have? In fact, let's just restructure this. Result. And then we're going to pipe that into a printfn right there. Just a little bit of rearranging. Well, the tables object, it says there's 4. Lo and behold, those are the 4 sheets that we have. So you can treat those sort of like, well, you can treat the table object sort of like a collection or a dictionary. And what I mean by that is you can iterate over it, sort of. We can do for sheet in Excel file.tables do, and we'll do printfn %a sheet, well, it should be s, but whatever, dot table name. And you'll see that we'll get tabular table report 1 and report 2. Tabular table report 1, report 2. Now, you should, well, depending on how into F# you are, you might know that this is kind of frowned upon. Ideally, you don't want to do this kind of looping. You want to do something more like what I did up here, where I piped it into a map, because we're doing a for each, essentially. Well, okay, Excel file dot tables, and then we'll just throw that in a seek.map, and we'll, wait, what? Long story short, it doesn't implement IEnumerable, and therefore it cannot, or at least I've been told, this is from better people than me, my understanding is that it doesn't implement IEnumerable, and therefore all the F-sharp collection types that you're used to using, array, list, whatever, with these wonderful little functions don't work. So this leaves you at a crossroads. The way I see it, you could figure out a way to convert this and its subdirectories and whatnot, because there's, like tables.rows, tables. Short version, there's subdirectories and subsections we'll go into in a moment. You could convert those to a F-sharp friendly format. But to me, that's a little weird unless you're doing some really heavy lifting. And in all the examples I've just shown for this data, I don't think that's justified. There are obviously major advantages to sticking in the immutable framework of F-sharp and all the cool compiler advantages and pattern matching and neat stuff. But ultimately, the whole point of this process is to take this data and then get it out and into something that we like that's easier to use. Converting it before you've already done the scraping, because I don't want every single thing from Excel. I don't need all the sheet names. I don't need all the extra cell information. I don't need the length information. I don't need any of that. I just want to transform the data and return something that's functional and immutable. So the way I normally do this is I will figure out a way to get my data. So maybe I do a for sheet in each. Maybe I do a more normal iterator loop, for I in 1 to 2 or whatever, 1 to sheet.length. So like, for example, one way to do this is for sheet in there. So for row in sheet.rows. Once again, I always forget the do clause. Do, and then for column, we'll call it for value in row.item array. Do, and then we can do print fn value. Item array. Boom. And if we were to run that, you'll see that it'll print out every single value in that sheet. And it even knows where to stop and where to start. No having to worry about, things. Obviously, it's not in a great order. It's going to go across, then down and whatnot. Probably not how you do it. But what I usually do is I open system.collections.generic so I can get the more traditional net lists. Unfortunately, my knowledge doesn't keep up here, but basically the mutable lists that everyone's used to from C#. So we'll do let data equal new list of string, and don't forget your open close parentheses because it'll confuse you forever otherwise. And I'll just go, okay, so data.add value, and you'll notice something else here. I can't add it. Now, this is something I wanted to talk about as well, which is that everything in here is an object. It's not doing any type inference. It doesn't know if it's a string or a currency or a double or whatever. It's just saying, yep, that's an object. So you will do a lot of this, and whoops, I'm going to cheat and do a horrible thing here and use a reverse pipe. Sorry. You will do a lot of this. In fact, you will also do even more of this. Like you'll do a toString and then you'll pipe that into like an int because that column's supposed to actually be an int. Or you'll have to make a helper function that quickly does a try parse on the int because, it's an int right up until it's a blank space, or, someone puts a letter there, or it's an NA, or it's, some value it doesn't understand. So there will be a lot of that. I'm not going to go through it again. This is not a full guide. It's just, hey, be aware. It treats it as an object. There might be better ways to do all of that. I don't know. But if you know, by all means, please let me know. So either way, we're going to shove all this in our list. In fact, normally I make it a record. But again, I'm not going to go through all that. And then we return our list. Except right here, now we have a list. A list has IEnumerable. We can go sequence.toList. And now we have an F# list, which is immutable, and we get all of those cool features back, and we can start doing, list.map and go nuts. So that's the first thing is you're dealing with this mutable data structure because it's really designed for C# and more traditional .NET stuff, and we're in our immutable functional world, and it's not going to play nice. I use mutable variables, I use mutable collections, but only for this step. This step would normally be in another file, which is my transformation step, but when it's all said and done, after I'm done playing in the mutable sandbox here, I shove it out back to my immutable list, and now I'm back to idiomatic F#, where mutables are going to be ideally never done. I just don't see a reason to jump through all the hoops of trying to convert this to something immutable first for me to then take that immutable data and only keep parts of it and then make it immutable again. Well, I wouldn't make it immutable again, but I'm already doing my transformation here. Let's do it all at once. So that's that. I've also talked about this. Please note, this does not let you write to a file. If you want to write to an Excel file, I'm not really sure what the best way is. It's not something I do very often. I've heard that EPP or EP Plus, I think it is a great thing. I've used it maybe once or twice in C#, but it is no longer free. My understanding is that there's an older version that you can still use for free, but newer features may not be used or may not be available. I have no idea. I have barely dealt with that. So if you're trying to programmatically write to Excel files, this is probably not what you need. But if you're like me and people just keep giving you data in Excel and you'd really like it to not be in Excel, this is going to be what you want to do. Let me quickly look over if there's anything else I need here. Again, it's really concise and simple. It's the exact same block of code, the exact same function every time. You could modify this more as you learn more about it. There's good documentation on the data frame object. You're probably going to want to read it. And there's good documentation on the Excel Reader library. You're going to want to read through that. This is just, again, some really quick stuff to show like where stuff is. Oh, yes. The other thing to note, this tables thing. Let's see. Let's do let sheet equal is indexed. So you could do, a 0 index, or it's more like a dictionary. So you could do a 0 index, and that will get me tabular because that's the first sheet. But like many people, you don't often know how your data is going to come out and in what order, or if somebody's going to mess with the sheet order. So it's ideal if you can just specify it. Tabular, right? Yeah, and then we'll just get rid of you. Sorry, while I clean up my code real quick. Again, forgive me, print fn. I'll even do %s and do it right. Table name. And you'll see that this will work. Now it'll of course crash if somebody changes the name, and you can't tase people apparently, so that'll probably happen because people like to mess with Excel files, as we all know, but that's a whole separate subject of protecting your sheets and things like that. But this is another way to look things up. And then finally, the other maybe quasi-elephant in the room I wanted to go over is type providers. So if this is all you wanted to know and you're good, you're good. If you're wondering why I'm not using the Excel data type provider, type providers are really, really cool. I just don't know what the use case for them is, because the problem for me is, as I understand it, a type provider takes a sample file. So in this case, you give it a sample Excel file of what your reports look like. So let's go back to our guy. So you give it this, and it will generate all the objects it needs for you to be able to actually reference this in the code. You actually get IntelliSense. It's really powerful. It's really cool. One, it's a little bit slow. Two, the documentation is not great. This is a struggling issue all over the F# ecosystem. And three, and most important, type providers in general are not good with dynamic data or certain kinds of dynamic data. So for example, if my report was always this with these headers, it's great. And if a header gets added, it's not too hard to update the sample file to just pull a new header and have my code deal with it. However, when you're dealing with data like this, it struggles to create a structure. And worse, I showed this because the idea is that sometimes data is not there. So I run my report for all locations, all values, all possible combinations on one day, and it all shows. And so it generates my structure, and it goes, oh, all the data is there. None of these are options. Then one day, the location closes, and it shows up with nothing, and the type provider crashes. getting a proper sample file to demonstrate this is difficult. Worse, it doesn't seem to handle dynamic sheets well. The reports I'm getting can have thousands of sheets that vary by plus or minus 100 or 200 or 300 sheets. It did not seem happy with that. So that's why I'm doing it this way rather than messing around with the type provider. I think the type provider can actually write to Excel files. So again, if you're looking to write, that might be something you want to do and explore. But this is why I feel that the type provider, which is so often recommended, is kind of a trap, because if you're dealing with, well, like me, people who are giving you data who are not from data science, don't understand data structure, don't know what tabular data is, you're lucky if you can get it even in, something as nice as this, let alone, like, well, they put it up here in this block and then some over here in that block, and this over here is color coded and merged and in all caps for some reason. And that's the kind of data I deal with. And for that, you cannot use that. So I hope all of this was helpful. Again, I struggled with a lot of this for way longer than I wish I had. I'm still not sure this is the best solution, but it is one that I use in production, and it is quick, and it is easy, and it's helping me get the code written. If someone wants to claim that this is terrible and provide input, please do, by all means. I would love to know more about how other people are handling this, but the answers are so often, well, I use the type provider, or, oh, well, yeah, I just do this, and it's not to the level of detail that I needed. So again, I hope this helps, and have a good day.